Hello, everyone. Today, we are flipping the script on how you think about English. Maybe you're lying in bed, earbuds in, eyes just starting to blink open. Or maybe you're mid-commute, coffee in hand, traffic crawling, and your mind already racing with to-do lists. But here you are, showing up for your English. You might be good at English if you listen to this video. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. I love knowing where in the world this English journey is landing. Now let's focus, let's start our next journey together. You've probably told yourself before, I'm just not good at languages. Maybe it was after you froze during a conversation, misused a word, or stared blankly at a sentence you thought you should have understood by now. But here's the secret that nobody teaches in school. You're not bad at English. You're just trying to learn it in a way that doesn't match how your brain actually works. How you learn English easily? Memorize this for beginners. Your brain is wired for language, just not the way textbooks pretend it is. Think about it. When you were a kid, you didn't study your first language. You lived it. You didn't learn grammar first. You cried, pointed, copied, listened, and eventually you spoke. You weren't learning smarter, you were learning naturally. And now you're older, smarter, more tired, but still just as capable. The key now? Use that intelligence to your advantage. You don't need to work harder. You need to work smarter. Let me tell you what being smart in English really looks like. It doesn't mean knowing rare words like antediluvian or onomatopoeia. It means knowing how to say, actually, I don't agree, in 5 different tones. It means understanding that what's up doesn't need a dictionary definition, it just needs a vibe check. It means knowing that silence in a conversation is not a test, it's space to breathe and think. And speaking of smart, here's today's word for your toolkit: assume. To assume means to take something for granted or believe it's true without proof. You might assume you're bad at English because you don't sound like a native speaker. But is that really true? What if fluency doesn't mean sounding perfect, it means sounding comfortable? So let's break that assumption right now. You don't have to speak fast to be fluent. You don't need a big vocabulary to connect. You're not behind. You're right where you need to be. Now think about how you usually study. Do you start with big goals like, I'll learn 50 new words today? Then you try, struggle, and feel bad when you can't remember more than 5. That's not smart learning. That's self-sabotage in disguise. Smarter learning is when you focus on what's actually useful. Words you'll use, phrases that show up in real conversations, sentences that feel like you. Here's a smarter way to study. Instead of memorizing 10 new verbs, learn 1 and use it 10 different ways. Let's try with assume. I assumed you were finished. Don't assume she knows. Can we assume this is correct? He assumed too much. People assume I'm fluent because I listen a lot. Boom, you just made grammar, vocab, and confidence, all from one word. That's how you learn English smarter, not harder. Another trick? Stop obsessing over what you don't know. Start doubling down on what you do know. You know how to greet someone. You know how to describe your day. You know how to say, wait, I need a second. That's already a lot. And every episode of this podcast is here to help you build on top of that, not start from zero. You're not a beginner. You're a builder. Remember what I learned in English from this video? That assuming you're behind or bad is just a bad assumption, and you're smarter than that. Let's go even deeper. Smart learners don't just listen to English, they listen for patterns. They notice when native speakers say, you know, before sharing an opinion. They hear kinda and know it means kind of. They spot how I was like is used for quoting someone casually. And suddenly, things click. That's what we'll keep doing together here, spotting smart patterns, turning them into habits, and letting your English grow organically, not aggressively. Let's recap. 1 word to lock in today, assume. 1 learning principle, Smart English learners build fluency by focusing on what matters most. One beginner tip: practice using one new word in 5 useful ways. You didn't need a miracle to be good at English. You just needed to stop assuming it had to be hard. You open your notebook or your phone, ready to study, but the motivation just isn't there. You think, maybe I'll just scroll for a few minutes first, and suddenly it's been 40 minutes and you haven't even started. Sound familiar? You're not lazy, you're not undisciplined, you're just using a system that's broken. And now you're about to throw that system in the trash, because today you learn something freeing. Working harder is not the answer. Working smarter is. And studying English harder might actually be the thing that's slowing you down. How you learn English easily. Memorize this for beginners. Studying longer doesn't always mean studying better. You need strategies that match how your brain really learns. And right now, your brain is tired of overthinking English. Let me paint the picture of hard studying. You write down 50 words but don't remember 45 of them. You replay the same grammar rule over and over until it sounds like static. You try to watch English videos, but you pause every 5 seconds to look up words. That's not language learning, that's language suffering. Let's flip it. Smart learning looks like this. You hear a phrase in a podcast, say it aloud, and use it tomorrow. You pause a video only when you feel curious, not panicked. You don't memorize 20 new things, you use 3 things well. That's real progress. That's learning smarter. Let's introduce today's power word: overwhelm. To feel overwhelmed means to feel like everything is too much. Too many rules, too many words, too much pressure to sound fluent by yesterday. Sound familiar? The smarter way to learn is to reduce overwhelm, not increase it. And here's how you do that. 1. Focus on input before output. Don't force yourself to speak before you're ready. Listening gives you patterns, tone, and vocabulary first. It's like filling your cup before pouring it out. 2. Use the 3P method: passive, pattern, personal. Passive: listen to the podcast episode naturally, like background music. Pattern: replay one sentence and notice the structure. Personal: use that structure with your life. Example: podcast says, "I couldn't figure it out." You repeat, "I couldn't find my keys." "I couldn't understand the joke." "I couldn't believe she said that." Now it's your sentence. Your brain isn't being forced, it's being fed. 3. Celebrate tiny wins. You understood a joke in English today? That's a win. You ordered coffee without freezing? Win. You listened to a full podcast without stopping it? Major win. You're building your English momentum brick by brick, not brick wall by wall. Remember what I learned in English from this video? That feeling overwhelmed doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means it's time to simplify. Let's check something together. Think about yesterday. Did you consume English or fight it? Did you try to force yourself to write a full essay? Or did you smile when you heard someone say "no worries" in a way that made sense? Smart learners chase clarity, not complexity. And clarity lives in daily exposure, not in stress. Here's a practice to try today: the one phrase loop. Pick one phrase from this podcast. Let's say, "I couldn't figure it out." Step 1, say it 3 times out loud. Step 2, change the ending. "I couldn't figure out the answer." Step 3, make it a question. "Could you figure it out?" Step 4, use your real story. "I couldn't figure out how to use the ticket machine at the train station." Now you've built grammar, listening, and speaking skills in just 5 minutes, without the headache, without the cram session. Let's talk about another smart habit: limit your tools. You don't need 7 different apps, 3 YouTube channels, 2 notebooks, and 5 dictionaries. You need a podcast you trust, hi, a way to speak out loud, a brain that feels calm, not crammed. Because calm brains learn faster. That's neuroscience, not poetry. So today, ditch the pressure, ditch the guilt, ditch the voice that says, I should be better by now. And listen instead to this one. You're learning English smarter than ever, and it's starting to show. Let's bring back today's key word, overwhelm. Try saying, I used to feel overwhelmed by English. I'm learning to avoid overwhelm by doing less better. When I listen to this podcast, I don't feel overwhelmed, I feel understood. Let's recap. One word to lock in today, overwhelm. One learning principle, smarter learning reduces pressure and increases retention. One beginner tip, use the one phrase. You're staring at the screen. Text in English, paragraphs full of meaning, and suddenly something clicks. Not everything, not yet, but more than yesterday. You understand the mood, the message, the words are starting to stick. You didn't try harder, you just shifted your energy toward what matters. Less effort, more progress. That's the magic of learning smarter. How you learn English easily, memorize this for beginners. The secret is not in doing more, it's in doing the right things at the right time. You don't need to master everything. You need to master the parts that give you momentum. Let's explore that with today's powerful word, efficient. To be efficient means to get things done using the least waste of time, energy, or resources. And learning English efficiently means knowing what helps you grow and what just keeps you busy. Let's look at how most people waste time. Writing word lists they never review. Watching hours of English videos but understanding almost nothing. Reading complex articles instead of content made for learners. Jumping between accents, topics, and platforms until their brain burns out. That's not efficient. That's spinning wheels. Now let's look at what you are doing smarter. You're listening to stories with context. You're practicing phrases instead of single words. You're using your real life to anchor new language. You're not chasing perfection. You're chasing connection. You're starting to think like an efficient learner. Let's dig into what real progress looks like. It doesn't always feel exciting. Sometimes it feels boring, quiet. But one day, someone says something in English and you understand it without even noticing. You think, wait, did I just follow that whole conversation? Yes, you did, because progress is invisible until it isn't. Let me give you a practical framework I call E3. Expose, echo, expand. Expose yourself to natural English, like this podcast. Echo what you hear. Repeat key phrases out loud. Expand by changing one word or applying it to your life. Podcast says, I didn't expect that at all. You echo, I didn't expect that at all. You expand, I didn't expect the meeting to be so short. Or, I didn't expect her to remember my name. 3 steps, 5 minutes, natural English. Here's the thing about being efficient. You stop chasing 100% understanding. Instead, you focus on the one thing that moves you forward today. And maybe today, that's learning the phrase, didn't see that coming. You hear it in the podcast. When he showed up with a guitar and started singing in the middle of the cafe, I didn't see that coming. Boom. Not only do you understand the phrase, you feel the moment. It becomes yours. Now let's apply it. My teacher gave us a surprise quiz. I didn't see that coming. He actually apologized. I didn't see that coming. She moved to Canada last month. Wow, didn't see that coming. Now it lives in your vocabulary, effortlessly. Let's do a quick challenge. Pick any 3-minute podcast moment. Pause after every sentence and ask, what emotion do I feel here? What's one phrase I can steal and use? How can I make it personal? You're not studying English like a subject. You're studying it like a skill, like cooking or driving or dancing. And guess what? It's working. Remember what I learned in English from this video? That chasing efficiency means learning less but retaining more. Let's return to the word efficient. Use it in real life. I want to be more efficient with my time. This method is more efficient than my old routine. The podcast helps me learn English efficiently. Here's another smart idea: language stacking. That means combining English with activities you already do. Cooking, listen to the podcast while prepping. Walking, shadow sentences softly as you move. Scrolling, read English memes or short posts instead of just your native language. This isn't about finding more time, it's about using your time better. Because when you build your English into your day, you're not pushing harder, you're growing naturally. Let's recap. One word to lock in today: efficient. One learning principle: progress comes from focused, repeated action, not intensity. One beginner tip: use the E3 method: expose, echo, expand. You're not stuck, you're streamlining, and every small, smart move you make is one more step toward fluent, confident English. You're walking through a busy place, maybe a shopping mall or a metro station, and English is all around you. Announcements, ads, background songs, people talking nearby. And this time, instead of zoning out or panicking, you start catching pieces of it. Next stop: sale ends tomorrow. Excuse me, do you know where? Something has changed. Your ears are tuning in. You're not just hearing English anymore, you're listening smarter. How you learn English easily? Memorize this for beginners. Listening is not just about understanding words. It's about training your brain to recognize meaning, rhythm, and real-life flow. Today, you're unlocking one of your most powerful tools: active listening. But first, meet today's word: blur. A blur is something you can see or hear, but not clearly. Like, the words were just a blur, or everything was a blur when I landed in New York. That's exactly how English sounds to most learners at first: too fast, too squished together, too blurry. But here's the smart shift. Instead of trying to hear every word, you learn to hear ideas, emotions, and phrases. The podcast helps you do this naturally. No subtitles, no panic, just exposure, repetition, and real stories. Let's explore why listening is so underrated. When babies learn language, they listen for over a year before speaking. They listen to sounds, tones, repetition. Eventually, they start making guesses, copying, trying. Then they talk. Adults can do the same, but faster, because you're aware. You have context, you can imitate on purpose. That's what smart listening is. Let's take a real example from the podcast. He was just about to leave when the phone rang. If that sentence sounded like, he was just about to leave when the phone rang, that's totally normal. It's connected speech, natural English. But now, with smart listening, you don't panic. You chunk it. He was just about to leave, time phrase, when the phone rang. Now try shadowing it. He was just about to leave when the phone rang. Say it again. Feel the pause. Feel the rhythm. That's how you train real-world listening. You're not decoding, you're mimicking and internalizing. Here's a method we love on this podcast: pause and predict. When listening to an episode, pause after 5 to 10 seconds. Then ask yourself, what do I think they'll say next? What's the tone? Funny? Serious? Surprised? Then press play and see how close you were. This builds anticipation, which builds comprehension. It's a shortcut your brain loves. And here's a big myth buster. You do not need to understand everything to benefit from listening. Even if you only understand 30%, that's 30% more than yesterday. Remember what I learned English from this video? That blur is the beginning of clarity. You just have to keep your ears open long enough. Now let's use our word blur in a few ways. The first time I watched a movie in English, it was all a blur. Native speakers talk fast. It just sounds like a blur sometimes. Now I can catch phrases even when it's a blur. Let's talk accents. Many learners say, I understand American English, but British is so hard, or the opposite. Smart tip: Stop chasing perfect understanding of every accent. Start with what's easiest for you, then gradually expose yourself to other voices. This podcast sometimes switches tones, speeds, and emotions on purpose because your brain needs that variety to become resilient. You're building flexible listening, not fragile textbook ears. Here's a fun challenge for you today: the blur to clear game. Step 1. Play 10 seconds of this podcast on regular speed. Step 2. Replay that 10 seconds on slower speed. Many podcast apps allow this. Step 3. Try to repeat one phrase aloud. Step 4. Say it at full speed. You're teaching your ears and tongue at the same time. Let's also shout out a trick smart learners use: audio looping. You take one 15-second clip and play it 3 to 5 times. The first time, just listen. Second time, listen and repeat. Third time, shadow it in real time. Fourth time, pause and say it your own way. Example phrase: he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Your versions: I couldn't believe what I saw. She couldn't believe it was real. You won't believe what happened next. Now your listening becomes speaking, effortlessly. Let's recap. One word to lock in today: blur. One learning principle: smart listening focuses on chunks, emotion, and rhythm. You're sitting alone, maybe at a cafe, maybe on your bed, and you want to speak English, but no one's around. No conversation partner, no teacher, just you and that little voice in your head whispering, "How do I practice speaking if there's no one to talk to?" Well, here's your answer. You don't wait, you create. Because today, you learn how to speak smarter without the awkward pressure of waiting for the perfect speaking partner. How you learn English easily? Memorize this for beginners. Speaking practice doesn't need a classroom. It needs your voice, your imagination, and a little courage to sound silly for 30 seconds a day. Here's the truth. Most learners think they can't practice speaking unless it's with another person. But that's a myth, because when babies learn to talk, they babble to themselves first. They play with sound, they imitate, they repeat. You can do the same. Let's introduce today's powerful word: mumble. To mumble is to speak quietly, unclearly, almost like your mouth is half closed. He mumbled something I didn't catch. She's always mumbling when she's nervous. Now here's the fun twist. Mumbling isn't just something people do, it's something you can use when you're starting out. Why? Because it lowers the pressure. When you say English phrases softly, just to yourself, with no goal of perfection, you get comfortable. You build muscle memory. You speak without fear. So mumble that phrase from the podcast. She was just about to leave. He didn't see that coming. Guess what happened next? Say it while brushing your teeth, while doing dishes, while looking at your shoes. Nobody needs to hear you, but you need to hear yourself. This is called solo shadowing, and it's one of the smartest ways to build speaking reflexes without judgment. Let's make this more structured with a method we use a lot on this podcast: echo, vary, own. Echo the phrase from the podcast exactly as you hear it. Vary it slightly by changing a word or ending. Own it by making it about your life. Example phrase: I should have known. Echo: I should have known. Vary: you should have told me. Own: I should have studied before that meeting. Just like that, you've practiced stress, contractions, emotion, and grammar, all without anyone listening. Smart, right? Here's what else you can do. 1. Speak to your reflection. Don't laugh, this works. Pick a phrase and say it to yourself in the mirror like it's a line in a movie. Try emotions: confident, shy, angry, tired. 2. Narrate your life. Look around you and describe things out loud in simple English. I'm holding a blue pen. This coffee tastes stronger than usual. I'm literally talking to myself. That's fine. You're not being weird, you're being fluent. 3. Argue with yourself. Seriously, take 2 sides of a fake conversation. You: I think we should go. Also you: no way, it's too early. You again: come on, it'll be fun. This builds speed, reaction, and confidence. No partner required. Remember what I learned in English from this video? That you don't need someone else to speak, you just need permission to try. Let's not forget, speaking is physical. Your mouth, your jaw, your tongue, they need to move in new ways. And mumbling, whispering, and shadowing train those muscles without fear of mistakes. And when you do meet someone to talk to in English, guess what? You'll be ready, because you've already practiced 100 mini conversations in your head. Let's return to our word, mumble. Try saying, I always mumble when I'm unsure. Don't mumble, say it clearly. I was just mumbling to myself in English again. Embrace it, use it, let it be your warm-up before confidence kicks in. Here's another technique, voice notes to yourself. Open a voice recording app. Record yourself speaking English for 30 seconds. Topic? Anything. What you ate, how you feel, something funny you saw online. Then, listen back, not to judge, but to notice. Am I pausing too much? Did I sound natural? What word did I use well? You're not auditioning for a role. You're building trust in your own voice. Let's recap. One word to lock in today, mumble. One learning principle, speaking starts with solo practice, not conversation. One beginner tip, use echo, vary, own. You don't need to wait for the right time to speak. You're already doing it, quietly, privately, bravely. And soon, that mumble, it'll grow into a sentence, then a reply, then a full-on conversation with someone who says, wow, your English is really natural. And you'll smile because you know exactly how that happened. You put in your earbuds, the podcast plays, and you hear a story, not a list, not a lesson, but a real moment. Someone gets lost, someone misunderstands a word, someone makes a hilarious mistake in a cafe. And without even trying, you're learning. You didn't take notes, you didn't pause and rewind 10 times, you just listened. And now, that story is part of your memory. Why? Because stories stick. They always do. How you learn English easily? Memorize this for beginners. Your brain is built for stories. When language is wrapped in emotion, visuals, and surprise, your brain remembers it 10 times faster and keeps it longer. It's not about how hard you study. It's about how deeply something lands. Let's introduce today's word, recall. To recall means to remember something, especially from memory, sometimes unexpectedly. I can't recall where I put my keys. He recalled that strange moment in the meeting. I suddenly recalled a phrase I heard on this podcast. And that's the thing. You don't remember grammar tables. You remember stories. Here's a story you might hear on the English Leap podcast. He meant to say kitchen, but accidentally said chicken. So instead of asking where the kitchen was, he said, "Where is your chicken?" in front of 5 coworkers. They're still laughing. You laugh too. It's funny. But now, try to forget it. Can't, right? Because stories are emotional, visual, sticky, and every English learner needs more of that. Now, let's be smart about it. Here's a method called story snapshots. Step 1. After every podcast story, pause. Step 2. Ask yourself, who was it about? What went wrong or right? What did I feel? Step 3. Retell it in one sentence, then add your twist. Podcast story. Someone orders a fried frog instead of fried rice. Your twist. Once I ordered fries and got fire sauce. Close enough. This turns memory into muscle. Now you're not just hearing stories, you're retelling them, you're owning them. Let's do a mini drill together. Podcast line. She panicked when she realized she was on the wrong train. Now shadow it. He panicked when he saw the exam paper. I panicked when my phone died during the call. You panicked when the lights went out, remember? You didn't memorize those lines. You built them from a story shell. Now here's something even smarter. Build your own stories. You don't need a perfect plot, just real emotion. Try this. Think of the last time you felt embarrassed. Now tell it in English, just a few sentences. Include one new word you heard in the podcast. Example, I was in a rush and accidentally wore my shirt inside out. No one said anything until after the meeting. I was mortified. That word, mortified, equals extremely embarrassed. You'll never forget it now. Here's what makes storytelling magical. It doesn't matter if your grammar is perfect. It doesn't matter if your vocabulary is fancy. What matters is connection, emotion, flow. Remember what I learned in English from this video? That when English becomes a story, it stops being a subject and starts becoming a skill. Let's return to recall. Use it today like this. I recall hearing that phrase before. Can you recall what he said? I suddenly recalled a funny mistake I made in English. Here's another technique, the 5-word story. Pick 5 English words, any 5, then build a story using all of them. Try train, mistake, chocolate, late, laugh. My train was late, so I grabbed a chocolate bar. I made a mistake and picked the one with chili inside. I couldn't stop laughing. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. Because smart learners don't learn from rules. They learn from moments. And those moments live in stories. Even better, stories give you structure without stress. First, something happens. Then there's a problem. Then there's a reaction. Finally, a result. That's English conversation. That's real speech. And that's exactly what this podcast trains you to do, without the boring parts. Let's recap. 1 word to lock in today, recall. 1 learning principle, storytelling boosts memory, emotion, and fluency. 1 beginner tip, use story snapshots and 5-word stories to practice. You're not just hearing English, you're living it. You're not just remembering words, you're recalling moments. And every story brings you closer to becoming a storyteller yourself.